Welcome to the Country Files 5 Takeaways. This is a new series that we're doing to accompany the Country Files series that Franca de la Fuente do, focusing on what buyers expect from some of the main nationalities buying in Spain. This will basically be a summary of all the research, all the interviews that Franca de la Fuente have done about one particular nationality, and we're going to extract, between Peter and myself, we're going to extract the 5 things we feel stand out the most and that people would find the most interesting. So on that, we're going to start off straight away with the big one, which is stats. And why stats? Because the question is it fact or is it fiction or over-exaggerated that Americans are buying in Spain? Peter, hit me with it.
All right. Well, we have the data, but it's always interesting to also have a look at an eye test. The data is in the brochure. So what we found is that from the latest data, Americans are now number 15 on the list of nationalities buying in Spain. But an interesting number is that they're actually number 2 when it comes to average price per square meter. So that gives you an indication that the interest is there and that they are actually buying. But I mean, I think it's quite fun to also to reflect on the eye test. I mean, in Corte Inglés or anywhere else, can you find Americans right now? I know I can. I see them around, so to speak. But I'm also in contact with American agencies or agents that are starting businesses here. We have a lot of American clients in the law firm right now. I think that they are heard about other kind of meetings with American investors. So definitely, I think it's quite clear that it's not only a rumor, but actually facts.
And I think one thing that we should say at this stage is that I think the percentage is 1.54 of all foreign buyers in the whole of Spain are American. Now, when you bring that down to Andalucia, that gets more concentrated. Bring that down to Málaga, even more concentrated. And probably when you bring it down specifically to the Costa del Sol, that percentage is likely to be higher. Now, we don't have the stats because they're probably 8th or 7th or something, and then you only get the top 3. But the additional thing to throw on top of that is that there's also Canadians buying, and they're not part of that stat because it's a different country, quite rightly. And this country file doesn't cover Canadians because Canada has its own rules and its own way of buying, etc.
That's correct.
But I think when the market talks about Americans, what they're really talking about is North Americans.
Yes.
From the US or from Canada. For the purposes of the exercise, we're focusing on the US buyers because they are the bigger of the two demographics buying.
Let's focus on the Americans, but not to forget the Canadians.
Poor Canadians. Okay, so one of the things I can talk about to do with the stats and whether they're buying or not, that I think agents may find useful to know, is that because it's a relatively new market, at least in terms of a noticeably large market here, not all agents are selling to Americans at the moment. Some are. There are some agencies that I know that it's the second biggest foreign nationality that they're selling to. But then other very well established, very successful agencies are not selling to hardly any Americans. And I think for them, they probably would like to know that, yes, they are buying. Your competitors are selling to Americans. And it's probably just, in my opinion, it's just a case of marketing. That they haven't traditionally marketed North America because there hasn't been much of a buyer presence over there. And logic would dictate that it will just even out over the next 12 months to 24 months where everybody starts to get a little piece of the action. But at the moment, it does seem that there are some agencies selling to a lot of Americans and some agencies not selling to hardly any.
Well, we're not a real estate agency, but I can see that that's probably a common thing in Marbella, right? Because there are always new nationalities, countries popping up. We know for a fact, of course, that the Polish market has been very strong here for some time now. And let's say Eastern European countries in general. And it's just a matter of how active you are, I guess, and how you plan your marketing, etc. And which decisions you do in your company to work different markets.
I think you've hit a great spot there. The Polish, it reminds me a lot to the Polish market in the sense that about 3 years ago, more or less, sort of around the COVID-ish time, there was a lot of talk on the market about a lot of Polish buyers coming into the market. A lot of agencies were bringing this up. It got brought up in one of the real estate conferences here. And a lot of the agencies, it was very similar. They were asking, oh, but how do we get these Polish buyers? Is it true there are a lot of Polish buyers? And at the time, the Polish agencies were doing very well with the Polish buyers. Go forward 3 years, and all agencies are doing well with Polish buyers. And in fact, most agencies, at least international ones, have at least one Polish speaker in the team. And obviously, the need for an English speaker isn't such a problem with American buyers. But I think a similar thing will probably happen in the market with the North American buyers.
Yeah, we shouldn't maybe go too much out of topic, but I think the trend, and I think many can agree with me, for Marbella or the Malaga region is it's a new hot relocation spot. It's a new hot spot for relocation. Of course, people are buying here second homes for vacation because of the weather, etc. But Marbella, the Malaga region, is turning into, or developing into, it could at least, a place where people globally decide to move to. So I think that the influx of these kind of new markets, American, Eastern European, South American, etc., that will become the new norm. That will be, we will have the world as our market.
So then I'm going to jump, my position number 2, I'm going to take one of what would have been my number 3 and move that forward because it segues perfectly into it. I think we could put it under the category of Marbella is changing.
Yeah.
There is, one of the big takeaways, which sounds super obvious when you say it, is the time difference and things such as when you're dealing with North American buyers. What would you have to say about that?
Well, in our experiences, and as I said, we have quite a few American clients. And first of all, you have the time difference, that's obvious. So our lawyers and myself, we need to be available to our clients. And that, in this case, it means we have to work nights or sometimes weekends. Because if you're helping a client with a transaction, or let's say a big transaction, you can't expect to do normal work hours, Spanish work hours. So that's clearly something that we have to get used to.
And that must be a big challenge for, not so much for agents who are used to working strange hours anyway, but particularly for anybody else in the industry, such as lawyers or mortgage brokers, etc., that have more normal office hours. That has to be a change in culture, I guess, right?
Well, I guess so. But I think that what you mentioned there about Marbella is changing is something that I've really thought about a lot, maybe the last year, but more intensely now for every week that goes. And this is again on the topic of, I mean, Marbella is changing rapidly. So prices go up. People are moving here to live here, to relocate to Marbella, or at least work from Marbella. And they bring their companies with them, or their business activity with them, or they want to invest in Marbella and thus live in Marbella, etc. So it's a completely new landscape for everyone. So that means that everybody needs to step up and get used to that clients have certain expectations on services. So let's take the example of maybe restaurants. So I know, I'm not a big restaurant guy, I have to admit, but I read that there are a lot of very good new restaurants opening up. We have all the new beach clubs, we have the amazing new branded projects, etc. And those clients buying, and those are they expect certain services of a certain level. And the same with lawyers and law firms. These clients, they have almost always tax questions, immigration, corporate, and not only the pure transaction. So we need to, at least here in Franca de la Fuente, we are adjusting our services so for this new market because Marbella is changing.
So that takes me to the next one, number 3, which is, it's got not the most sexy name, but you will explain what we're talking about here. And that is, this is the US market we're talking about, and this is the fiduciary duty or the expectation of a certain level of professionalism.
Yes.
Broker licenses, the full shebang. Tell me more about that.
I think this is the most useful point maybe for any agents that are listening to this, is that first of all, as in many other countries, to work as an agent in the US, you need to be licensed. But the licenses are provided by the states, so you have a license. You can have a license in different states to work as a real estate agent. But the American market is highly regulated, and I mean that in general when it comes to the real estate market. Not only that the agents need to have a license, it's regulated to which authorities that are involved in the transaction on a local level or a county level or a state level. The disclosure of the property, that those regulations also differ from state to state. And what does it mean? And the fiduciary duties that you mentioned, well, what does it actually mean? It means that the responsibilities of an agent in the US can actually be more compared to a lawyer's responsibilities, a lawyer under the bar, right? Because we have the principle of loyalty. We have to be loyal to our clients. Discretion. We can't disclose anything to anyone else in the from the conversations we have with our clients. The duty to inform them correctly, the duty to be true and honest about everything. And these are duties that American real estate agents have, not maybe in all states, and that can also differ. So, and that means, of course, that a client in the US, they rely on their broker. I think we can recognize that term, my broker, my lawyer, my tax advisor. So that the broker in the US is a very, very important person for the client, and with formal responsibilities. So when they're coming to Spain, of course they know that the system is different, but they expect the same kind of services from their local agent here in Spain. They rely on them to give true information, correct information, and work on, let's say, on a certain professional level. And I know, as an example, actually, I just spoke to an American agent a few days ago, and he mentioned that the fact that we have duplicates and portals here in Spain, and that
duplicated properties, yeah.
And that the prices can differ from one portal to another. You would know this, I guess. That is something unheard of in the US. If you go to a real estate agent's website, the Americans expect to have the correct information. So when they see this is one price here, another price somewhere else, I mean, what's going on here, So I think it's very good for agents to know about this, to know what the expectations are from the American clients, because this is also my experience, that when the American client finds an agent that they feel that they can rely on, that's a pretty tight relationship, and they can rely on them for the investment that they do here.
I've spoken to a few buyers from the US recently, actually, or been in conversations with them. And the term that keeps them coming up in relation to this is the word team. And by team, I mean when they look back at their buying journey, their advice to other buyers is always surround yourself with a good team, a good lawyer, a good mortgage broker, a good real estate agent, broker. And that is their strongest advice to their fellow countrymen when buying in Spain, so they can be guided along the way, because exactly what you said, they have these, they are thinking that they are dealing with the equivalent of a lawyer or a financial advisor when they're dealing with a real estate broker. And that's just not how the market traditionally moves here. And that's not what buyers normally expect here either. So I think what you said, that this fiduciary duty, it sounds serious because it is serious.
Yeah. That's correct. And I think as another example of this is, again, I spoke to an American agent, very, very experienced. It's now opening up a new agency here on the coast. And on her agenda, meet the lawyers is always there. You have to go and see the lawyer before you enter into any negotiations, etc., because it's such a vital part of the buying procedure in the US. Well, maybe the agent is taking care of it, but let's say the one doing it here is the lawyer. So that's why it's so. And of course, in the end, the buyer should feel secure and confident before move on with their investment. And the Americans, I think, they will find that security when they know that they are surrounded by a good team.
That's interesting because a lot of the agents that I know that do work with American buyers, what they seem to have in common, now that you mentioned everything you just said, what they seem to have in common with each other is that in their own marketing, they're not just marketing product, but they're marketing themselves. And that is probably alluding to what you're saying, that the buyer is identifying with the broker they feel they can trust.
Yeah.
And that it sort of aligns with their values and works with them right through the process.
Yeah.
So whilst on the serious topic, we've got 2 left. Next one's also a little bit on the heavy side, but also super relevant, and that's, tell me, the taxation appears to be one of the takeaways with dealing with American buyers, perhaps more so than a lot of the traditional buyers. Why is that, Peter?
Well, first of all, America is one of the few countries in the world where you actually have an obligation to declare your global income, even though you're not a resident actually in the US. If you have a green card, you're an American citizen, you live in Spain, you still need to declare income in the US. So that, and the Americans know this, of course, so that naturally when they arrive here and they want to make investment decisions, they want to know the tax impact. Now there's a double taxation treaty, there are certain exceptions, etc. I don't want to bore you with those, but my experience with Americans, our tax advisors in the office regularly speak with American clients about taxes. They always want to talk about taxes. If they're buying as an investment or if they're buying to relocate, but also because they know that when they're buying a property in the US, the taxes differ from state to state. What is the actual, property tax in this state and in the other, right?
So then that leads me on to sounds serious, but probably the thing that, for me, on a very superficial level, is the biggest takeaway on a superficial level. And that is something that I really didn't know. So one of your partners actually at the academy course that you did the other month was telling the students of the class, and that relates to something that they might be pleasantly surprised about when they're buying in Spain, to do with what we call here EB, property tax. Tell me about that.
Well, everybody knows, I guess, that we pay the town hall property tax from the municipality tax. It's not irrelevant, but it is quite low sum when you relate it to the value of the property. In America, you pay property tax, and that's a yearly tax, and that goes, not to be very specific, but everything from 0.5 even up to 3% of the value of the property yearly. So if you have a property, let's say in the US for $3 million, and the property tax in your state or in your county or in your town is 1%, well, that's $30,000 per year. Now, so if you inform your clients of the local property tax in Spain, I know at least a few of our clients were positively surprised, so to speak, about that, because
so instead of paying what might be for 3 million example, 1 or 2,000,
yeah,
they could quite easily be expected to pay 20, 30, 40,000.
much more.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So those are the 5 takeaways. I have a couple of other little ones of my own.
Okay.
That I hope you don't mind me chucking in there.
Yeah.
They're not particularly evidential, but they are based on a little bit of observation. Super quick. One is that one American buyer said to me that their country folk are very surprised when they buy in Spain, or when they buy here in the Costa del Sol, of how small the kitchens are compared to back home. Apparently in the States, the kitchens are a big part of the household, and here they're like a little bit of a thing in the corner of the living room. So that's one of the things. So that would be my extra point number 6 if I was going to throw it in there. And number 7, I don't have the data for this in terms of specific numbers or anything like that. But again, a bit like the EB, medical insurance here for expats is so much cheaper than medical insurance in the States.
Yeah.
And I think obviously you have to look into what they actually are and what coverages are. I'm not going to go into that. But that quite often is also a very pleasant surprise for American buyers of how cheap medical insurance is here.
Yeah. As a final thing, I mean, these are clients that are, coming across the ocean to buy. So I think just the decision to travel to make the 9 hours or even more, to make the investment here in Europe, you're going to do your research. And you're going to try to do that very properly. And you're going to do that together with a professional team. And you want to know everything before you make your decisions. And you're coming from a highly regulated market. So those are also good takeaways, I think, to sum up.
Well, it's fabulous. It was a little longer than I had planned to make it, but I think everything we've said is super useful for people to know. So we'll be doing this with every country file from now on.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Peter.
Thanks, Alfredo.
Thank you, guys. See you soon.